This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. The moment I saw the DNA test results, my hands started shaking. 25%. Not 99%, not even 50%. Just 25%. Like a slap in the face, a cold, undeniable truth. Jenna was not my daughter. Stephen, my own brother, had been sleeping with my wife Alicia for God knows how long. The numbers on the paper didn't lie, but my mind refused to accept it. I sat there, surrounded by my closest friends, the guys who had been with me through everything. Howard, Jeremy, David, Kyle, Jake, and Samantha. The room was silent, except for the soft clink of a glass being set down on the table. Nobody knew what to say. Even Jeremy, the joker of the group, was at a loss for words. "This can't be real," I finally muttered. My voice felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. "John, man," Howard started, but I shook my head. "I need to see her," I said, standing up abruptly. "John, wait," David said, his voice calm but firm. "You need to think this through." But I wasn't thinking. I was running on instinct. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat as I grabbed my keys and walked out. The drive home was a blur. I barely remember the turns, the stoplights. I don't even remember pulling into the driveway. All I remember is the way my hands clenched the steering wheel, knuckles white, breath coming in sharp, ragged bursts. When I walked through the front door, Alicia was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just spent the last 8 years lying to me, like she hadn't stolen my life. "Where's Jenna?" My voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. She looked up, startled. "She's at my mom's. Why?" I stepped closer, and she must have seen something in my face because her whole expression changed. Fear. Guilt. "What's wrong?" she asked, but her voice was too controlled, too cautious. I pulled the DNA results from my pocket and threw them onto the coffee table. "Explain this." For a second, she just stared at the papers. Then she let out a small, nervous laugh. "John, what is this?" "You know exactly what this is," I said through clenched teeth. Her hand trembled as she picked up the papers, scanning the words. Her face paled. "John, Don't. Just don't," I snapped. My whole body was shaking now. "How long, Alicia? How long have you been screwing my brother?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, gripping the paper so tightly that it crumpled in her hands. "How long?" I roared, slamming my fist against the wall. "Before we got married," she whispered. The air left my lungs. "Before we got married." The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. "So you knew," I said, my voice hollow. "You knew Jenna wasn't mine, and you let me believe she was." "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "John, please." "Don't say my name," I snarled. "You don't get to say my name like it means anything to you." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice dead. "Who?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Who the fuck do you think? Stephen." She swallowed hard. I don't know." "You're lying," I said, staring her down. She hesitated for a moment, then her shoulders slumped. "He's at his apartment." I turned on my heel and walked out. She was still calling my name as I slammed the door behind me. The drive to Stephen's place was even more of a blur than the drive home. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought it might snap in half. My mind was racing with every possible way I could hurt him. Every memory of him pretending to be my brother, of him standing beside me at my wedding, of him holding my daughter, like he had any right to be in her life. By the time I reached his building, I was shaking with rage. I didn't even knock. I pounded on the door so hard the frame rattled. When it opened, Stephen was standing there in a t-shirt and sweatpants looking confused, until he saw my face. Then all the color drained from his. "John, what—" I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his jaw before he could get another word out. He stumbled back, crashing into the wall. "You stole my fucking life," I shouted. "John, stop!" He held up his hands, blood trickling from his lip. Just let me explain." "Explain?" I laughed, but it came out more like a growl. "You want to explain how you've been sleeping with my wife? How you stole my daughter? How you took my fucking money and played house behind my back?" "It wasn't like that," he said, voice desperate. "Wasn't like that?" I repeated, my vision going red. "Then tell me what it was like, Stephen." He hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw the truth. "You were planning to leave," I said, realization dawning. "You and Alicia. You were going to take my money, take Jenna, and just disappear, weren't you?" His silence was answer enough. I let out a bitter laugh, stepping back. "You really thought you could do this to me and just walk away?" He wiped the blood from his mouth. Look, man, I never wanted it to go this far. But it did, I said coldly. And now you're going to pay for it. He flinched at the venom in my voice. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Stephen and Alicia thought they could ruin my life and get away with it. They were wrong. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was too wired, too consumed with rage and betrayal to let me rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, Stephen and Alicia, laughing behind my back, planning their escape, using my money, my life, like I was nothing more than an afterthought. I sat in my car outside Stephen's apartment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The rational part of me knew I had to be smart about this. I couldn't just keep throwing punches, no matter how much I wanted to. I needed to make sure they paid for what they did. So I called the only people I could trust, my friends. The 6 of us gathered at my beach house, the one place I still felt like I had some control. Howard sat across from me, his expression serious. Jeremy paced back and forth, running a hand through his hair. David leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his military training keeping his emotions in check, but I knew he was just as furious as I was. Kyle was quietly listening, nodding every now and then. Jake, our tech guy, was already on his laptop searching for information. Samantha was the last to arrive, her eyes sharp with determination. We need to be careful, Howard said. Stephen and Alicia have already stolen from you, and if they think you're onto them, they might accelerate their plans. Too late for that, I muttered. They know I know. Good, Jeremy said. That means we don't have to play nice. What's the plan? David asked, cutting straight to the point. We get proof, Jake said without looking up from his laptop. We need solid evidence of their financial fraud. Stealing your money? That's one thing. But if we can prove they were planning to flee with it, and if we find any forged documents, we can take them down legally. I nodded. And I want them out of my house. Tonight. Jeremy grinned. Oh, I love this part. Hold on, Howard said, raising a hand. We can't just storm in there. We have to be methodical. Which is why we divide and conquer, Samantha said, leaning forward. John, you keep them busy. Make them think you're wallowing, broken, whatever they expect you to be. Meanwhile, the rest of us will gather everything we need. Stephen's been using your house like his own personal playground, Jake said, typing rapidly. He's sloppy, too. I've already pulled some of his financials. The guy's drowning in gambling debt. Alicia's been covering for him using your money. My jaw clenched. I want to see it. Jake turned his screen toward me. My bank statements. Large, suspicious withdrawals over the years. Transfers to Stephen's account disguised as family loans. Payments to casinos, luxury purchases, 5-star resorts. They were planning to buy a house in Spain, Jake added. I found emails between them discussing properties, setting up offshore accounts. I exhaled sharply. They were never going to tell me. They were just going to disappear. We won't let that happen, Kyle said firmly. So we break into your house, record everything, throw their shit out, and when they come home, we make sure they know they have no place there anymore? Jeremy summed up, a glint of excitement in his eyes. Exactly, I said. And if Stephen tries to fight back? David asked. Then we remind him that you used to be special forces, Jeremy said with a smirk. David just nodded. It was time. I met Alicia at a coffee shop later that day. She looked like she hadn't slept much either. She had the nerve to try and reach for my hand when she sat down. I pulled away. John, please, she started, her voice thick with fake emotion. You have to understand, I never meant for things to happen this way. Then tell me how you meant for them to happen, I said, my voice ice cold. She flinched but recovered quickly. I was scared. I loved you, but Stephen and I... Don't say you loved me, I cut her off. Don't even pretend. She swallowed hard, glancing around the cafe. I don't want to fight, John. We can work something out, for Jenna's sake. You don't get to bring Jenna into this, I said, gripping the edge of the table. You've been lying to her, lying to me, for her entire life. She sighed. John, I know you're angry, but... Angry doesn't even begin to cover it, I said. But it's fine. Take whatever you want. Just don't expect me to fight for you. Her eyes flickered with something. Relief? Satisfaction? She thought she was winning. She thought she was manipulating me. So you're just letting me go? She asked carefully. I have nothing left to say to you, I said, standing up. I could feel her watching me as I walked away, but I didn't turn back. While I was keeping Alicia distracted, the team was already inside my house. Jeremy filmed everything. Every single luxury item they had bought with my money, every forged document, every piece of evidence that could be used against them in court. Holy shit, Jake muttered as he flipped through a drawer. They really weren't even trying to hide it. Look at these receipts. They were using John's money for years. Howard carefully placed all the evidence into a file. This is enough to press charges. Kyle and David were handling the fun part, throwing everything they owned out onto the front lawn, furniture, clothes, personal items, all of it. This is satisfying as hell, Jeremy said, tossing a pile of expensive dresses onto the grass. By the time Alicia and Stephen came back, their belongings were scattered all over the yard. Alicia gasped. What the hell is this? Stephen stepped forward, fists clenched. John, you can't do this. I already did, I said. You have no right, Alicia started. No right? I let out a hollow laugh. This is my house. Everything in it is mine. And you? You're nothing here. Stephen lunged at me, but before he could reach me, David grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back. Stephen let out a strangled yelp. You want to keep running your mouth? David asked, his voice calm but deadly. Stephen was smart enough to shake his head. You have 5 minutes to get the hell off my property, I said, stepping closer to them. Or I call the cops. And trust me, with everything we found, they'll be happy to take you in. Alicia looked like she was about to cry. John, you're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you, I said. Stephen glared at me. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said simply. They had nothing left to say. They grabbed whatever they could carry and disappeared into the night. I turned to my friends. Drinks are on me. Jeremy clapped a hand on my shoulder. Now that's the John we know. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The days after kicking Alicia and Stephen out were a blur of emotions. Relief, exhaustion, anger that still burned under my skin. I should have felt victorious, but I wasn't done yet. They had stolen too much from me, and I wasn't about to let them walk away without consequences. The evidence my friends gathered was solid, proof of financial fraud, forged signatures, and stolen money. We had enough to take them to court, but there was something more important than revenge. Jenna. She was still with Alicia, and even though I knew the truth about her parentage, I couldn't abandon her. She was still my daughter, even if blood said otherwise. The first time I saw her after everything fell apart, it nearly broke me. I arranged to meet her at a park near her school. Samantha came with me for support, knowing I wasn't in the right headspace to do this alone. When I got there, Jenna was sitting on a swing, her little hands gripping the chains tightly. She looked up at me, eyes wide and uncertain. Hey, kiddo, I said, forcing a smile. Hi, Daddy. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know if she would still call me that. I knelt in front of her. How have you been? She shrugged. Mommy says we might move. My stomach twisted. Move where? She didn't say. Rage simmered just beneath my skin. Of course, Alicia was trying to run. Listen, sweetheart, I said carefully. I know things have been weird lately, but I want you to know something, okay? She nodded. No matter what happens, I love you. You're my daughter. That won't ever change. Her lower lip trembled. But I heard Mommy say Uncle Stephen is my real dad. I felt like I'd been shot in the chest. I took a slow breath, forcing down the pain. Jenna, do you know what makes someone a dad? She shook her head. It's not just about being there when things are easy. It's about being there when things are hard. It's about loving you no matter what. I've been there since the day you were born, and I'm never going to stop being your dad. I promise. Her eyes welled up, and before I could say anything else, she threw her arms around my neck. I don't want to leave, she whispered, my hands clenched into fists behind her back. You won't, I promised. When I got back to my car, Samantha was waiting, arms crossed. She's planning to disappear with Jenna, I said, my voice like steel. Then we stop her, Samantha said. The legal battle was hell. Alicia fought me on everything. She claimed I was an unfit father. She tried to argue that since Jenna was biologically Stephen's, I had no parental rights. But Howard, my lawyer friend, was relentless. Doesn't matter if she's biologically yours or not, he said during one of our late-night strategy meetings. You've raised her since birth. Courts don't just strip away parental rights like that, especially when the biological father is a documented fraudster facing prison time. It wasn't easy. Alicia dragged it out for months, missing court dates, demanding more mediation, making up lies. But she made a mistake. She forged more documents trying to hide the stolen money. Jake found proof of it. When we presented it in court, the judge's expression hardened. A custody hearing is one thing, he said, but this is fraud. Alicia's lawyer looked panicked. By the time the dust settled, she had lost almost everything. The judge granted me full custody of Jenna. Stephen, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. His financial fraud case caught up to him fast. The judge wasn't lenient. 2 years in prison. When I heard the sentence, I felt nothing. He looked at me as they led him away, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. I turned my back on him. The first night Jenna came back home, she ran into my arms. "I missed you," she said, her voice muffled against my chest. "I missed you too, kiddo," I whispered. We sat on the couch, watching her favorite movie. She fell asleep with her head in my lap. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. "You okay?" Samantha asked, sitting beside me. I nodded. "I think I will be." "Good," she said, "because we all went through hell for this. You owe us a barbecue at the beach house." I laughed quietly. "Deal." I looked down at Jenna, my little girl, the one person in this world I would fight for over and over again. Stephen and Alicia thought they could destroy me, but I won. The months that followed were a slow rebuild. After everything that had happened, I had to piece my life back together, not just for me, but for Jenna. She had been through so much, too much for a child her age, and even though I had won custody, the damage left behind by Alicia and Stephen wasn't something that would just disappear overnight. She had questions, hard ones. "Daddy," she asked one night, curled up on the couch beside me, "why did Mommy lie?" I hesitated, not knowing how to answer that in a way that wouldn't make her world even darker than it already was. "Some people make bad choices," I finally said. "They hurt others because they think it will make them happy. But it doesn't. It just makes them lose the people who really love them." She was quiet for a long time. Then, in a small voice, she said, "I don't want to see her." I swallowed hard. "You don't have to," I said gently. "You never have to do anything you don't want to. But if you ever change your mind, I'll be right here." She nodded, leaning against me. "Do you think Uncle Stephen is sorry?" she asked. I stared at the TV, at the frozen frame of a cartoon we had long since stopped paying attention to. "I don't know," I admitted. "But whether he is or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you are safe and you are loved." Her fingers curled into the fabric of my shirt. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. I felt my throat tighten. "I love you too, kiddo," I whispered back. Life went on. There were small victories, Jenna settling into a routine again, laughing more, sleeping through the night without waking up in tears. And then there were setbacks, moments when she would suddenly go quiet, when she would flinch at the mention of her mother's name. I made sure she knew she was never alone, and neither was I. My friends never let me fall. Samantha, Howard, Jeremy, Kyle, David, and Jake, they stuck around. They reminded me that I still had people in my life who cared. One evening, Samantha showed up at my door with a six-pack and a bag of takeout. "You look like shit," she said, pushing past me into the house. "Good to see you too," I muttered. She dumped the food on the table and cracked open a beer. "So, when's the last time you did something for yourself?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, your entire life has been about surviving this mess. But now it's over. You won. So what are you going to do now?" I hadn't thought about that. I had been running on survival mode for so long that the idea of actually moving forward hadn't even occurred to me. "No clue," I admitted. She raised an eyebrow. "Ever thought about dating again?" I snorted. "Not a chance in hell," she smirked. "Yeah, I figured. But one day you will. And when that happens, just know, I'll personally interrogate anyone who tries to date you." "Good to know," I said dryly. She grinned, then nudged the takeout toward me. "Now shut up and eat. You need to put some weight back on. You look like a damn skeleton." I rolled my eyes but grabbed the food anyway. And for the first time in a long time, I felt normal. Months passed. Seasons changed. I sold the house where Alicia and I had lived. Too many bad memories there. Instead, I bought a smaller place near the beach, somewhere fresh, somewhere that belonged only to me and Jenna. One night, as we were sitting outside watching the waves, Jenna turned to me with a serious look on her face. "Daddy?" Yeah, kiddo? She hesitated, then said, I'm glad you're my dad. I felt my chest tighten. Me too, I whispered. She smiled, then leaned her head against my shoulder. And in that moment, I knew, no matter what had happened, no matter what I had lost, I still had the one thing that truly mattered. I had my daughter, and we were finally free. If there's one thing I've learned from everything that happened, it's this. Family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, about love, about the people who stand by you when everything falls apart. Stephen may have been my brother by blood, but he was never my family. Jenna may not share my DNA, but she will always be my daughter. Betrayal cuts deep, but it doesn't define you. What defines you is how you rise after everything has been taken from you. For a long time, I thought my life was over. But now I know that losing Alicia and Stephen wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. And I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever experienced betrayal like this? If you have, how did you move forward? Let's talk about it in the comments. I read every single one and I want to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, if it made you think, if it made you feel anything, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, share this story, and hit the like button. It helps more than you know, and it lets me keep bringing you stories like this. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And remember, sometimes losing the wrong people is the best thing that can ever happen to you.